This is FinCast, the podcast from J2 Innovations, the creators of Fin Framework, an innovative software framework for smart buildings, smart equipment, and IoT.
Welcome to FinCast, the podcast from J2 Innovations, where we explore groundbreaking technology innovations and the stories behind them. I'm your host, Steve Lodge, and today we have a very special episode for you. We're diving into the world of energy management and its role in sustainability, focusing on BlackPAC, a revolutionary distributed energy resource management system and its environmental benefits. I'm thrilled to introduce our guests, Scott Mensch, VP of Customer Experience at J2 Innovations, who is passionate about sustainability and how technology plays a role in driving energy savings, and Rob Cullen, VP IoT Solutions at Blackstone Energy Services, who's had a lifelong obsession with technology and automation. Welcome to the show, Scott and Rob.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, excellent to be here. Looking forward to the chat.
Great. To set the stage, can you introduce yourselves and your role in your businesses?
Sure, let me get started. If I look back, sustainable energy or alternate energy is what I used to call it. It goes back even to my teenage years where I think I built a solar hot water heater for the family pool. I was found up on the roof with black painted piping. I think I borrowed some hoses from the neighbors, and that kind of led to really my first real job. I worked for a company called Solarnomics as a designer. And ultimately, that grew into a design build company where I was doing HVAC design while I was studying to be a mechanical engineer. And so I carried that passion throughout the career. And I do remember being on a job site one day, and this automation guy was there, and he had a laptop. And back then, laptops took up your whole lap. And he pushed a button and something opened or something started. And that was my first exposure to controls. And quickly I called his boss and said, tell me more about this building automation stuff. And so really I went from mechanical engineer to application engineer, ultimately finding my way into the software world a little bit deeper with a startup company called Tritium, and did a decade there as various roles, trainer, technologist, and also sales, and then founded J2 Innovations as a framework company. And so I think energy and energy savings has fundamentally been part of my career path for nearly 3 decades.
Wow. And Rob, have you got this sort of lifelong passion that Scott has?
Actually, similarly, so I was always known when I was younger. Even when I was 12 or 13, I was sort of messing around with electronics and computers, and I was quite often getting in trouble for taking apart pieces of equipment, VCRs. So that got me into some trouble when I was younger. It kind of carried over through into high school, and I took many electronics courses. And in fact, I actually failed high school because I took too many of those elective courses in electronics and computers, and I didn't actually take a French course, so I had to finish that off in order to finish high school. That carried on into college as a industrial electronics technician. We learned programming, we learned industrial controls, PLCs, that sort of thing, which led into working for my first controls company. We didn't actually understand what building automation was until we actually got into the industry. But the PLC background is what happened there, is what got us into that field. And so throughout the last bunch of years, similar timeline, working for various companies in different roles in building automation. And just recently, in the last 8 months or so, joined Blackstone as a VP of IoT Solutions. And for me, it's a little bit of a switch because now you're primarily focused on energy management and bringing data up to customers in a very presentable way. They can analyze their information, and it's a different mindset, but in a lot of ways it's the same. So I was never bored as a child, put it that way.
And we're going to have young listeners, or relatively young listeners, to this podcast. And if you've never heard of what a VCR is, you may have to Google that. Now, let's start our discussion with the question about the current state of energy management. What are some of the biggest challenges the industry is facing today, and how exactly do energy management platforms work to address these challenges? Scott?
Sure. Let me start with saying that energy management in buildings is really one of the crucial pieces for putting us on the right path for achieving net zero and becoming more sustainable. So they're very closely coupled. Fun fact, though, is currently 80% of our buildings don't even have building management systems in place. So clearly, they consume their fair share of energy and carbon emissions. And so we need to address that challenge, not only for the large and the complex buildings, but also for that wide range of smaller buildings that are maybe simpler, but still consume collectively a ton of energy. So I think the challenge that J2 Innovations is looking to solve through our framework technology called the FIN framework is to simplify and to expand the reach of building automation systems to the underserved buildings and to help capture energy savings in that segment of the market as well.
Rob, what are the challenges as you see them?
What we've seen is that a lot of customers have data, massive, sort of the opposite of what Scott was saying. Some of our existing clients have massive data. Even though they have the data, they're not using it. So beyond what BlackPAC was initially created for, we're now seeing opportunities to go to our customers and offer ways to bring that data up, whether it's code generation, metering. It could be things that haven't been brought into their BAS system that they would like to have. And we can achieve this through adding very simple IoT devices that can marry into the system that they have through BlackPAC. So we can bring in BAS information together and combine it with this IoT data sitting on the FIN framework, and then present it and normalize it so that the customer just sees data and can sort of take a look at it that way. They have so much that they don't know they have. So we're finding as we go into these buildings, we have the discussion around energy management, and then we find other information they have that they could utilize at not a lot of cost necessarily, because the FIN framework allows you to integrate that data so easily. So I think there's a lot of power there.
BlackPAC is far from being just a passive monitoring tool then. It's actively managing and optimizing energy use?
That's right, yeah. So once this information is in and these integrations are complete, we can go in and optimize, sort of take a look at what's happening in the building at certain times of the year, in certain weather conditions, and then apply that learning to optimize those systems sort of on the higher level than the BAS currently would be or is capable of doing.
And what kind of impact are we talking about on a building's energy consumption and overall efficiency?
So the impact would be in relation to what they have now in typical BAS systems. We're hearing this a lot, that customers don't have access to, say, historical data on their points on their systems because there's limitations. I've explained this to some customers. There's limitations in BAS systems in terms of memory available. Because this system sits on the cloud, everything is constantly trended and there are no limits. So the feedback we're getting is, yes, that would be amazing if we could sort of watch the systems live and then make the changes, sort of play with our systems, our HVAC systems or whatever it is, see the immediate result, and then maybe we'll make that change ourselves. So that's been a discussion that's come up recently more and more. So we can effectively do that through our Optimize module.
You mentioned the collaboration between J2 Innovations and Blackstone Energy to develop BlackPAC, being powered by FIN framework. Let's talk a little bit about that journey and how the two companies got together and how the platform came around with sustainability in mind. Scott, tell us more about that.
Yeah, the origin story, if I go back a little bit, for J2 Innovations was kind of born out of necessity, is the mother of invention. And it was exactly that. One of my customers, when I was a system integrator and a supplier of technology system integrators, we did lots of different projects, and it was always a very bespoke kind of solution. There's a lot of labor, a lot of mouse clicks, a lot of engineering that goes into creating a smart building. And this was exasperated when he came to me one day and said, I have this really large project. It's like a whole city block. It was called the City Center in Las Vegas. And it ended up being one of the largest projects in US, and thousands of pieces of equipment, tens of thousands of points. And so any kind of engineering or control logic or graphical user experience, all those compounded because of the sheer size. And I remember him saying, if I survive this project, we're going to start a company and we're going to do this right and really optimize on making this easier. And that really is the origin story of J2 Innovations. The technology behind the scenes is called the Fin framework. And think of that as almost like a toolbox that is made up of pieces that work very closely together, and the workflows that glue the solution together are highly optimized. So the individual mouse clicks to make a bespoke solution have been generalized in such a way that a lot of the work is actually done by the software itself. Behind the scenes, we use this concept of metadata. And this is not a new concept. Metadata is used by like social media. You put tags on things. And there literally is not a system integrator at Facebook that's linking your uploads to your photo album. It's being done by metadata. So that new concept is being applied in building automation through the Fin framework, and is the foundation for what our APIs are that OEMs use to build their solutions. So make a long story a little bit longer, we really took that pain point of what was going on in the industry, which was very bespoke, very labor intensive, optimized it, wrapped it up with some new technology, which is metadata and Project Haystack, which is a metadata standard, and then worked together with companies like Blackstone Energy to create new products that don't require a ton of engineering, that don't require a ton of pre-work, because they're kind of like standing on our shoulders to build their next product.
Rob, was Fin an obvious choice when you identified you needed a platform?
I believe it's the only choice. What Scott was just mentioning about Haystack and metadata, that's a problem that's existed in the BAS world for years. And doing the work myself, the mouse clicks and creating the graphical user interface over the years, you are literally duplicating, and it could take days to build something. So I started in January, but researched your company last year, and I was amazed to see that no BAS company had really, at least up here, had started to think down that road. The amount of time you can save by using that metadata to create systems, and then once you have the template, repeat, that's a massive game changer.
I mean, Rob, it's early days, isn't it, for BlackPAC?
It is.
What do the initial successes look like?
We've seen some remarkable early success through utilizing our ICI module, for example. Customers have reduced their carbon footprint and realized significant savings since implementation. In the future, we can see a collision of building-wide system integration and energy management solutions, which is something I was talking about sort of earlier, where the entire campus of buildings can share data from disparate systems and allow maximum energy savings and operational efficiency. Beyond just the energy management, customers want to save money on their operations and make themselves more efficient. And the two go really well together when you're having these discussions. Ideas come up as we're talking to our customers about, hey, maybe there's something we can do to help you do your job a little easier, or make your building a little bit more efficiency from an operational standpoint. So we're continuing to develop those products and evolve the software with this feedback in mind.
For listeners who might be building owners or managers, what should they be looking for when choosing an energy management platform, Rob?
I think it's important to pick a company that's at a size where they're not massive and they can pivot quickly. In a larger company, a development cycle can take forever. And If that engineering team is centralized somewhere in the world, serving, say, the globe, or even just Canada or the US, a decision has to be made whether or not that becomes the standard, or if it's just going to be something that's generated for a customer. So sometimes I've seen in the larger companies I've worked for where customers ask for things, they don't get them. And that's the problem. So if you're dealing with a smaller sort of company that's where we're at, we can make those changes. We can get the development cycle through quicker and be more flexible.
And Scott, I mean, people won't necessarily know if they're using Blackstone Energy Systems that it's powered by Fin framework, but Fin is the crucial aspect of that, is it?
It is. It's an enablement for OEM partners like Blackstone Energy. It's also kind of a bigger picture play here, which is data standards. Both Rob and I kind of grew up through what we call the open protocol wars, and it was BACnet and Modbus and LawnWorks, God rest its soul.
Yeah, that's true. That's glad to see that.
And some win and some didn't win. But we really, at this point now, are not just talking about getting devices communicating and sharing data, but now we're sharing data between subsystems and up to applications. And I think that's where Project Haystack comes in as a data standard. And that's where the Fin framework that leverages that data standard really shines. And Rob talked about operational savings for end users like facility managers. There's also operational savings for the system integrator and the OEM who's creating that solution. And it's all tied back to that story of having a framework that is reproducible, that is optimized, and that leverages the metadata to do the work for you. So as I shared in my career, I was an application engineer. Those hours and hours of creating those bespoke solutions go away. They just are literally being done by the computer, matching and linking and bringing a lot of those steps together, kind of magically, if you will. It's interesting. A millennial would just say, "Well, that's the way all software works, isn't it?" And they've implemented, let's say, a Nest thermostat in their house, and it's just plug and play, and they answer a few questions. And behind the scenes, probably be using metadata. They're joining the cloud, and they've got a dashboard, and they've got all their energy data, and they're able to tweak schedules. That's the plumbing that we brought to the table, and that's the solution that Blackstone Energy has developed on top.
Scott, did you foresee companies like Blackstone Energy using tools like Fin to really push ahead in terms of what we're trying to achieve with sustainability?
It's really, really satisfying to see that go full circle from solar panels on top of the family house to a career of integration, engineering, software, and then culminating 30 years later in a sustainability product and solution. So yes, but it was a long journey, and it's so rewarding to see companies like Blackstone Energy now doing that based on the success that we had and a lot of the hard work along the way. So I wouldn't say it was an end game that we saw, but it was in our DNA right from the beginning, and it's really neat how it worked out.
What a great thing when you can include your passion for technology with your passion for reducing energy consumption and the environment, improving the environment.
Yes, it is an early partnership, isn't it? And it's a really positive one. That's great. Look, Scott, Rob, thank you for joining me so much today on this podcast and for sharing your insights and experience. It's been a pleasure having you here. For our listeners who want to get more information about the BlackPAC platform, where can they go, Rob?
So you can access our demo, a small demo on the web at blackstoneenergy.com/BlackPAC. Send us an email at info@blackstoneenergy.com or reach out on LinkedIn to myself if you feel like. We can also set up a quick 1-hour demo if a customer is interested, and we can walk them through our modules. And it's a really great demo and worth your time for sure.
And Scott, am I right? There's a case study as well on the website.
There is, yes. J2 Innovations website is really set up as an educational website. We've got the Blackstone Energy case study featured right at the very beginning under our blogs and what's new. We do an educational blog literally every week. And so feel free to visit us at j2innovations.com. And if you'd like, you could sign up to receive updates in our blogs, or you can go to our interface and search for various topics that are germane to the industry. I think I'm fairly prolific when it comes to putting blogs out. So feel free to hit that resource up. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about the Fin framework, we've got lots of training courses and other educational resources on our website that you can link to.
Fantastic, Scott. And thank you, Rob. And thanks to our listeners too for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time for more exciting stories from J2 Innovations and their partners. Until then, this is Steve Lodge signing off.
Subscribe to get the latest episodes automatically using your favorite podcast app. Copyright J2 Innovations, a Siemens company. Find us at j2innovations.com.